Good morning and welcome to AFFIRM's January virtual speaker series. I'm Melissa Bruce, VP of Government Programs. On behalf of Jackie Rubino, AFFIRM's president, I want to extend a warm welcome and appreciation to you for joining us today. Today is the 6th annual Change Agents Trailblazing Women in Government IT event, and we will be hearing from several exceptional leaders. This annual panel will discuss the path to successfully leading in challenging times. The discussion will highlight how gender diversity in our federal workforce is critical to solving the country's IT transformation issues today and in the future. Today's session is on the record, and we welcome our colleagues in the media. For those of you who are new to AFFIRM, the Association for Federal Information Resources Management, we are a nonprofit volunteer educational organization with the goal of improving the management of information through technology within the federal government spanning over 40 years. In the spirit of AFFIRM's charter, we have raised and contributed well over $250,000 to date for high school and college scholarships. This event would not be possible without our generous speaker series sponsor, Veritas, as well as our sustaining partners shown in the slides. Their logos are displayed on the screen in acknowledgement of our appreciation for their support. Thank you to all of our sponsors. We would also like to thank our volunteers for their hard work and continuous effort put into our programs. Special thanks goes out to today's program lead, Bill Pratt, and to volunteers Liz Anthony, Sandy Mestry, and Natalie Carey. Natalie has volunteered to represent the team and provide a few quick housekeeping rules.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm Natalie Carey, Director of Appian's Federal Civilian Practice. Thank you for letting me introduce the session today. A few quick housekeeping items. If you have a question, simply open the Q&A tab on your webinar toolbar and type in your question. If you see another question that you would like the speakers to answer first, click the thumbs up button to upvote the question. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat box in your toolbar to chat with the webinar host. We have also included a very brief survey at the end of the event to capture your feedback to help us continually improve. We appreciate if you could take just a few moments to participate. The survey will pop up in your browser when you close the Zoom application. Back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Natalie. Without further ado, I am pleased to introduce today's keynote speaker, Ms. Stacy Cummings, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Acquisition at the Department of Defense. In this position, Ms. Cummings advises the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Acquisition on matters relating to the Department of Defense acquisition system while advancing innovative, data-driven approaches across the acquisition enterprise. Previously serving as the Program Executive Officer, Defense Healthcare Management Systems, Ms. Cummings managed the delivery of healthcare and advanced data sharing through a modernized electronic health record for service members, veterans, and their families. Ms. Cummings previously led leadership positions at the Department of Transportation and the Department of the Navy. Ms. Cummings holds a Master of Science in National Resource Strategy from the Industrial College of the Armed Forces and a Master of Science in Management Information Systems from the Florida Institute of Technology. She received her Bachelor of Science in Business Logistics from the Pennsylvania State University. Please join me in the chat box to give Ms. Cummings a warm AFFIRM welcome.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you to the AFFIRM team for inviting me to be part of today's webinar. And of course, thank you to Mark Crisco on my team who brought this organization to my attention and let me know that this opportunity was available. So I'm very honored to have an opportunity to address you dedicated volunteers, and really just recognize your contributions over the last 40 years. So let me tell you a little bit about first where we are here in the department from a transformation, digital transformation, IT transformation perspective. As was pointed out, I'm the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Acquisition. And so I work with a group of outstanding career and politically appointed executives. And one of the things we've been doing over the last couple of years is really transforming the way that we acquire weapon systems and systems to support the warfighter in partnership with industry as well as with other partner nations. So Ms. Lord, who is the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, really challenged me and my team to look at the policies and processes associated with acquisition. And what she was looking for us to do is really to become more adaptive and more agile. And so over the last about 18 months, we have significantly changed the policies associated with how we acquire systems. And really, some of those really big transformational type changes are around the recognition that while we do acquire a lot of systems that are hardware based, that they cannot be successful without software, without information, and without data. And so I would say that across the two main factors that influence the transformation that I've been leading over the last 2 years or so, being more agile, bringing in a recognition that software is different. And one of the things we did was actually create a new pathway so that our acquisition program managers and program teams could use a modern, agilely based pathway and policies and processes to speed the delivery of capability from a software perspective. On the other side of that coin is the importance of data in actually managing how we make decisions. And so I had a really interesting interaction last year that I like to share when I talk about data. The interaction that I had was with a person who had decades and decades of experience. And what he said to me is that when we talk about data and data-driven decisions, in his mind, he was looking at his experience to be able to use his intuition to help influence decisions, which is great. And we need those folks around who have years and years of experience. But we also have to be able to drive decision-making to the lowest possible level. And in order to do that, you need data. And so there are several people actually I see in the attendee list right now as we speak who are working on that transformation of how we use data in the department to oversee and manage our acquisition decision making to drive down costs and to meet our schedule and performance requirements, if not exceed them. So to us and to Ms. Lord and to the whole team here, really information technology, digital data, and software are foundational to our ability to meet the warfighters' needs and our national security requirements. So let me talk to you a little bit about the sort of reason that we're here, which is to talk about women in technology and talk a little bit about diversity. And I thought that I would take an opportunity to tell you all a little bit about some of the experiences I've had throughout my well over 25 years of experience in the federal government. It makes me, I'm really excited to see how many women are really, women and girls are really are drawn to STEM type of education and STEM type of programs. And we absolutely need that to grow. One of the things that I've recognized in my career is that in order to attract the best possible candidates, we need to be attracting the most diverse amount of candidates first. So the candidates who want to come and work for us need to be as diverse as possible. And that's the best way that we can compete for the best possible skill sets to bring into the government, in my case, or into industry associated with national security from your perspective. One of the experiences I had when I worked for the Department of Transportation is I recognized that having women in leadership positions drew more women into the working level, which is, of course, the pipeline to create our future leaders. And one thing that we openly talked about, and we talked about it a lot, was how as as I came in a leadership position and more women became attracted to those positions, we really needed to make a concerted effort to also increase not just gender diversity, but diversity across the board, especially when it comes to race, education, and other backgrounds that we needed to bring a diverse group of people into those leadership positions, because at least in my experience, I see people looking at the leadership of an organization to determine whether or not they see themselves growing into that leadership position themselves. And so to me, diversity is, it's good. It's the right thing to do. Because it's the right thing to do, it's also the right thing to do to be able to attract really the best of the best who are coming out of college, the folks that are looking to change careers, and again, in my case, people who are attracted to coming to work for the government. We really need to increase diversity in order to increase diversity, as well as to increase quality of the candidates and the employees that we have working in our offices. Some of the other things that, again, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about my experiences in coming into the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense back in the 90s. I have definitely recognized that one of the wonderful things that gender diversity does, and this is absolutely applicable to the IT, information technology, STEM related career fields, is that women do bring a different viewpoint, and a lot of times bring a different sort of perspective to meetings and to ways of organizing. Some of the skills that you might see women excel at, and I'm not going to say that all of these are ones that I excel at, but some of that women excel at are, problem solving and strategic planning. Really looking, and this one is really, really near and dear to my heart. I feel very strongly about long-term planning, as well as being able to give a forward direction to all of the teammates that work on your team, so that they know exactly what direction leadership wants them to head in, and they always know that they're working on the most important projects for your agency, your department, or for your organization. I think women have been demonstrated have really good skills around multitasking, organizing, and really importantly, unifying, bringing people together, bringing teams together. And I think we're also very well adaptable to change. I will say, and again, I'm talking to you from my own personal experience, that when I came into the workforce, I came in actually in the area of logistics. When I came into the workforce, I have to admit that women in the room at all, and certainly women sitting at the table, was actually quite rare. One of the I have a story that I sometimes share with other women. When I was 2 years into my career, I actually had a woman who was a couple of grades more senior to me, and she took me aside and she gave me the great advice of making sure that I gave all of my ideas to a man, so that he could share that idea, and that way my ideas would have a voice when I was in meetings. I'm happy to say that I didn't actually listen too carefully to that advice, but it's always stuck with me. And so I try my best, and this is something that I ask you to do, whether you're a man or a woman sitting in the audience here today. What I always do try to do is make sure that if somebody did give me a great idea, that I take the opportunity to make sure people know that the idea came from that person. Clearly, we've all over the last several years had an opportunity to learn some new vocabulary around things like seat at the table, leaning in, mentors and sponsors. But I will say that I'm glad that these are all part of our current vocabulary, because when I first came into the workforce, as was demonstrated by the story that I just told you, that wasn't necessarily the case. And so that was a fascinating experience. I think that now, looking back on that, I'm very glad that I had an opportunity to have that interaction, but also I'm glad that I've had my own experiences. that have led me to really think about my career and what it means to me to be able to manage my own career, have a voice in my career, and really leverage the experience of the folks that came before me, especially women that came before me, as mentors, and whether that advice came in the terms of lessons learned of things that I didn't want to follow, or things that I did. One of the other things that I've talked to people a lot about, and again, based on my personal experience, I think about some of the characteristics that I had to take on early in my career when I was fighting to get a voice or fighting to get a seat at the table. I've noticed this in my own career, is that you use different skill sets and different characteristics and different strengths throughout your career in different ways. And one of the best books I ever read was a book that was all based on the idea that the skill sets and the characteristics that got you to where you are not the same ones that are going to make sure that you're successful moving forward. I would encourage everyone to give a little bit of thought to that, because when I think back to, and I'll use some government terminology, but I would say an early supervisor manager, GS-14, GS-15, the characteristics and the way that I had to interact with people. Again, this was in the early 2000s, so it was a different time, but it was also a different point in my career. Those characteristics and really the way that I interacted with people would not be the proper way or a way for me to be successful in the position that I hold now and in the year of 2021. So again, I say this simply because I think that it is always good to reflect back on the characteristics and the environment that you're in, successful, and how those characteristics can either be a strength or even a weakness as you move into your next position. When I was preparing to get ready for this talk, which again, I'm so happy to be here talking to this wonderful group of people, one of the things that I talked to my teammates about is that when I was, again, back at that time frame, when I was at GS-14, GS-15, when I was almost always the only woman in the room, and I looked around and felt how, at least to me, it felt very challenging or difficult that I had to, I felt like I was always sort of fighting to make sure I was heard, to make sure that the strengths that I was bringing were being recognized. I actually had an opportunity to work in a completely opposite environment when I was with the Department of Transportation. I actually worked in an organization where the entirety of the leadership team was women. There were about 7 of us, and we, for a period of time, it was actually a bit of a transition period, and it was right before I moved on to come back to the Department of Defense, but we had an entire leadership team that was made up of women. And as I was preparing for this, I was talking to my team about it, and they were as shocked as I was when I said that is equally challenging and frankly not the best environment either. And that's why I go back to my initial conversation. We're here to talk about gender diversity. We're here to talk about women in leadership positions. And I just want to share that having lived both, where I was the only woman in a leadership team to having all women in a leadership team, neither one of them is ideal. Diversity is important, and having having men, women, again, gender diversity, racial diversity, ethnic diversity, all of those things are valuable to an organization. And I can tell you, again, in my experience, that the most successful organizations that I've been in, the ones that come up with the best, most strategic plans, the ones that nurture their workforce, the ones that value development and value diversity in the workforce, are the ones that are the most diverse and are open to listening to everybody's viewpoint. I know I have just a few minutes left, and I'm happy to take questions, although I haven't seen any pop up on the Q&A yet. I want to talk about something else that I experienced here through the COVID pandemic. And I've always been really interested in the different personality types. We've all done our Myers-Briggs, and I know you'll be shocked to hear that I am a pretty strong extrovert. We've all gone through the process of figuring out ways to engage people who are less likely to speak up, or maybe you are the person who's less likely to speak up, and you've come up with ways to make sure that your tactics and techniques when we're in person, we've all come up with these different tactics and techniques to be able to make sure that we're engaging, either ourselves engaging or engaging others. When the COVID pandemic hit and there was a national emergency declared, I left my current job and I went off to be the director of the Joint Acquisition Task Force. This was a task force that at its height had probably 600 people. Our core team was more, a little less than 100. We met on a daily basis. But as you might imagine, because we were in the middle of a pandemic, we never met in person. And every single interaction, every meeting, every decision was made virtually. This was before we all got super good at Teams. And so it was almost all on the phone. And here is what I've recognized is that all the skills and all the tools that we've all come up with to be able to make sure that we can engage people, a lot of them, most of them go out the window when you start operating in a virtual environment. And I do believe that a lot of the things that we've learned through the COVID pandemic, once we're on the other side of it, we're going to continue to embrace more telework, more virtual, better uses of technology in order to engage. But I challenge all of you, whether you're a manager, a supervisor, an executive, an employee, think about what it means to engage employees and to make sure you as an employee are engaged in a virtual environment. I really found that, especially if you have 2 or 3 people in one room and everybody else is virtual, it is very difficult for the people on the phone or the people who are virtual to feel as engaged as the people in the room. It's also very difficult if only some people can be on video and others can't. And so to me, from my perspective, this is an amazing lesson learned that I'm taking away, is the need to be really, really deliberate in engaging in a virtual and in a telework environment in a new and different way, and that we can't, again, rely on the things that worked well for us in the past and assume that those are going to work well for us in the future. So I throw that out there as something that I have to admit is something that every time I get an opportunity to speak, I'm talking about, because I don't know that, especially the people that are sitting in the room, are thinking about that level of engagement for the people who aren't. And I don't want us to miss opportunities to get those wonderful ideas from people who may not feel as comfortable speaking up when there are potentially scores or hundreds of people on the phone. We do need to find ways to engage people in different ways. And that might mean that supervisors and managers actually need to spend more time being supervisors and managers in a virtual environment, not less time. And I think a lot of people probably make the assumption that it's the other way around. So again, managing to outcomes, really looking for products that are the outcome, not worried so much about managing activity, but really managing productivity and outcomes and strategic outcomes. So I gave myself at least a few minutes, and I think I do see that there is a Q&A. Oh, so Elizabeth, what a wonderful question, and I wish that I could remember. I will tell you that I read the book about what will get you here. Your what got you here isn't what is going to make you successful. So I apologize that I completely remember it had a blue cover, and I completely remember loving reading the book. So if I do come up with it, I'll share it back with the AFFIRM leadership. And I can do that. Oh, you're welcome, Elizabeth. All right. Well, as I pointed out to you earlier, me being an extrovert, I could talk for hours. And so I'm not going to do that. And since I don't see any questions popped up at the moment, I'm going to go ahead and, oh, here you go. It's what got you here won't get you there. Thank you, Leslie. That is what it was. And I bet it had I think it had a blue title. So I'm going to look it up, and I'm not going to be caught flat-footed in the future. So Marshall Goldsmith. Hey, I am not the only person who read this book. I love it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close unless anything else pops up, in which case interrupt me. But I do want to reiterate the importance of information technology, information systems in delivering capability to the warfighter. And without a doubt, I will tell you that the thing that I am most excited about and most proud of is the software pathway that we were able to put into policy in record time. And we did that with people who have technical degrees, people who took the initiative and were passionate about the fact that we in DoD really do need to change the way that we look at acquiring our systems, and that the things, the tool sets and the skills and the policies and processes that are appropriate to buy a brand new, very large thing that floats or flies or tracks is not the same. It's not the same skill set. It's not the same tools, and it's really not the same people that you need in order to have a successful information system, software driven system that is going to enable us to continuously upgrade, continuously improve, and continuously respond to the requirements of the warfighter. And so the work that you're doing, everyone who's part of AFFIRM, everyone who decided to join us today, the work that you're doing is critical to the nation, to national security, to economic security. And I hope that you enjoyed listening to me talk about myself for the last 25, 30 minutes. As I said, I'm an extrovert, so I love talking about myself. So I'd just like to, again, say thank you to AFFIRM as well as to Mark Crisco for inviting me to speak to you today. And I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to go on mute and listen to this outstanding panel that AFFIRM put together for all of you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing your experiences of being the only woman in the room and advice on how to handle that. I think a lot of women in IT have experienced something similar within their careers. It was also a great reminder to all of us to rethink employee engagement in the virtual world. So thank you again. I would now like to introduce our panel moderator, Charisse Hanner, producer for WJLA TV's Government Matters.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again. Thank you again, Ms. Cummings. That was excellent. Definitely enjoyed you talking about the best candidates requiring a diverse group and how you were ensuring your strengths were being recognized. Excellent keynote address. I would like to, without further ado, introduce our lovely panelists. Ms. Karen Evans is Chief Information Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. Ms. Beth Killeran, and she is Deputy Chief Information Officer at GSA. And Mary Davey is Deputy Associate Administrator, Mission Support Director at NASA. Welcome, ladies. And let's kick things off. I would like to do a quick opening statements from each of you. Let's just start with 2 minutes from each, your opening statement, and we can kick things off with Ms. Karen Evans.
Well, good morning to everybody. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to listen and exchange things with Mary and Beth Ann as well. And I'm inspired by our opening keynote. I took a lot of notes while she was saying stuff. And I was also going down the path of my own career, like revisiting different things when she was saying things. So I'm looking forward to the questions that you're going to ask. And I didn't realize, I did quick math, that when I started in 1983, in federal service, full time. But the one thing that I do like to share with everybody is I did start as a GS2 and ended up in presidentially appointed positions. And so the system works. through hard work and with leadership, and the system does work. So, you know, sometimes it may not seem like that in your career, but the system does work.
Excellent. And Beth?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am happy to be here, and just like Karen talked about, you know, been in government for a pretty long time, 25 years. I don't have as long as tenure as Mary or Karen, but have been in the government since 1994. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those experiences, but I think you're going to find a lot of us have very parallel types of experiences through the times that we came up through the ranks. And our goal here is really to shine some of the light on some of those experiences and hope that we provide some guidance for those that are coming behind us.
And Mary.
Hi, good afternoon. I really enjoyed Stacy's remarks, and a lot of that resonated with me, and I kept saying yes, yes, yes. And I have also read that book and would highly recommend it. And like Karen, I started as a GS4, I think, while I was still in college at Virginia Tech, and was lucky enough to have a very strong female role model and leader recruit me into government. And it was only supposed to be a summer job. And here I am 32 years later. So yes, the system does work. And I'll talk a bit about, I think, how lucky I was to have a lot of not only strong female leaders, but also other leaders that supported me throughout my career and gave me a bunch of really interesting and challenging opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to this, and was excited to see both Beth and Karen, who I have known for quite a while, on this panel. And just a great way to catch up.
Yeah, for sure.
And on that point, Mary, let me start with you. You all talked about starting in 94, starting as GS2, starting as a GS4. What about those women who may have been born during that time that you started in this career? What is your advice to those millennials, those millennial women who are thinking about emerging into government technology? Mary, what is your advice, especially being a mentor, being a mentee? How do you think people should start?
Just do it. So, and what I mean by that is when I started, again, I really didn't know anything about the organization, you know, what they did, and really what I was getting into. And what I found was I had a great group of people who were very supportive, had interest in me, in my professional development, and gave me those opportunities. And I think that's really important, is for, excuse me, you to not only like and want to learn and be challenged in what you're doing, but to have the right support structure around you. I had I think a fairly steady number of years where I was learning and growing and taking on additional responsibility. And then there were a couple of times where those leaders threw me into positions that I didn't think I was quite ready for, but I think that they knew that they had the support around me, and I had built a foundation by which I could then, you know, work through. And so sometimes things may seem daunting or challenging, but I would say just, you know, if you have interest in it, go for it. People always, I think, sometimes worry a little bit too much about, should I take this job? Should I not? It's not going to be your last job, right? And so you're going to learn something from that work. And you may learn that, well, I don't really like this. And I've had those jobs as well. But I think in every case, even in some of the most challenging jobs I've had that maybe weren't a lot of fun at the time, I learned a lot, and it offered me growth opportunities to go and do something else.
Trusting the process and the system does work. Beth, I want to ask that question to you too, but we have one question from the group. What is your advice to people moving from the commercial sector and people, those women who are in the middle of their careers and not necessarily at the start of their careers? What's your word of advice for them?
I think that Mary hit the nail on the head, which is take the opportunities as they arise. I think each one of us can tell you different times where we were put into positions that maybe were not exactly what we expected. I always tell everybody, before I came to GSA, my last five jobs, I actually applied to the job that I wanted, got the job that I wanted, and within 6 months of getting that job, they had me do a different job. I mean, and in each of those cases, you know, it was either moving up into a position that may not have been what I anticipated, maybe moving into something that I didn't expect, or moving into solving a specific problem. but each of those experiences allows you to grow. It provides you some skill sets and it has some visibility. So take each of them as they come. Look for how to network so that you can have people to rely on. So as I was moving into GSA, it was the network that helped me to move into this organization. So find things like AFFIRM where you can actually, you know, virtually connect with people now, and hopefully at some point in the future be able to connect in person, so that you have that broader range of connections, so that you can understand what the realm of the possible is, where those opportunities may have. But always, you know, shine your star as bright as you can. And as Karen said, you know, the system works. People will understand the value of strong work and commitment to the mission by which you're positioned to support. And if you do that, you will be recognized and have opportunities that come in the future.
And Karen, we're all piggybacking off of your comment on saying the system works. And we were just talking about networking, the importance of networking. What do you think the importance of mentoring is in this sector?
So I'm probably a controversial person to ask about mentoring, because I always, when I was coming up through the ranks, I was like, mentoring, why, like, who's going to mentor me? And I'm not mentoring anybody. Okay. I mean, because it was like, I mean, you guys are all laughing about that. So I think what both Mary and Beth and what we heard previously as well is there are opportunities that come along, and people provided opportunities to me. And my job as I progress through my career is to provide opportunities, you know, to know where there's talent, provide opportunities. But it's really the skill set of the individual that, like, it keeps that opportunity going. And I do think that there's a, you know, when we talk about mentoring, I think networking, I'm 100% all for networking, AFFIRM and all these organizations, that, because that's where you find the opportunities. But it's, you know, like when people always said it's your responsibility because you walk through the door first, you have to open the door for all these people. Well, that's the opportunity. But what I also learned, because I crashed and burned a lot along the way, when you have like 30 some years, it's still my skill sets that kept the door open. So someone recognized that I had the right skill sets, opened a door for me, but it was me who kept that door open. So what I have to do is turn around and create that same opportunity for someone else, so that they can open up the door for the next person and their skill sets, let them walk through. So that's, I look at mentoring a little bit differently than probably the traditional way that people think about it.
Letting your skill sets make the way and opening those doors for you.
And the person needs to know it's them, right? Like, you remember who brought you to the dance type of thing, but it is you who kept that door open, and you're the one that has the talent. So recognize that and have that confidence in yourself, and then turn around and present and provide the same opportunity for somebody behind you.
Excellent. Mary, I want to go back to the beginning of your career. What are the top 3 experiences that you feel shaped you into the change agent you are today in technology?
I think there's a few things. One is like I said, I had people around me that took interest in me and helped me with professional development and gave me the right experiences. So I started off as a IT acquisition project manager, and in that role at GSA as a support agency to all federal agencies, I was at the time supporting DoD projects, Department of Commerce projects, EPA projects. So I got a broad base of experience, and I think that was really helpful in seeing that all agencies pretty much have similar challenges. They approach things differently. There's different cultures. There's just different ways of doing things. So I think the experience was a big piece of that, the exposure. I did have people that I, consider mentors, and that not only opened doors for me, but also helped me along the way and helped me, just bouncing things off of me or giving me some, advice and ideas. And that also included formal executive coaching arrangements. So that was particularly helpful as I was getting into more senior roles and having a seat and a voice at the table, even before I became a senior executive. So I thought that was That was really helpful. And then sometimes there were experiences, like I said, that I didn't know that I was quite ready for, or maybe I didn't know what I was getting into. But with the right support, you roll up your sleeves and you dig in and you get things done. And it is on you, right? So somebody places you in that job, they're having the confidence and faith in you, and you have to be able to take on that responsibility. And so one of the things that I always say to people is, as you're looking at new opportunities for yourself, it can't just be about, I want to get to the next level, I want a promotion, right? You have to understand at that time, what is needed from the organization and from the people you're working with, and do you have the right skills and ability to take that on at that time? And jobs and requirements for jobs change depending on what's going on in the organization. I've managed organizations that are steady state, and that takes a different skill set than managing an organization that's undergoing major transformation, or, the house is on fire. So you really have to look at, am I right for this position at this time? And can I lead through and lead, the people that I'm working with the right way and giving them what they need? And am I going to like it, and have fun with it? So I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
So do you believe that your goals transformed over time, or were they mission focused, or did you always have an end goal at the beginning and the middle of your career?
I never really had goals for myself. Part of it was, do I feel like I can add value? And am I going to like doing what I'm doing? Am I the right person, like I said, at the right time for this? And am I going to learn and grow? So those are always kinds of the things that I looked for. There haven't been too many opportunities where somebody asked me to jump in and do something and I've thought too long and hard about it. Sometimes I wish I had thought a little bit longer and harder, because I've gotten into some things I thought, why did I do that? But I think, we all have that. And again, you learn from it, and it's always a good experience, at least from that perspective.
Every step being a learning experience. Beth, tell me, what are the top 3 experiences for you that shaped you into who you are today and the change agent within the space?
So I will say that I had a few different things, probably most of them actually when I became a first supervisor. So unlike Mary and Karen, I actually came in as a GS-11. I'd actually been a contractor for the federal government for a few years, and came in a few years after I graduated. But my first actual federal job, I actually had to leave DC and go out to Texas, moved to Houston, Texas, and supported the customs service for their IT land systems in East Texas and all of Oklahoma. And I was only there for a little over a year, but while I was there, something called the Oklahoma City bombing happened. And with that really formulates some of what you're trying to do from a customer experience perspective. I literally was in Oklahoma City 3 days before the attack, and had to immediately fly back to try to get some semblance of normalcy for the folks that were directly impacted by that building. And watching them and how they were reacting physically from being in that building in that experience, and just trying to help them, because all they wanted is some semblance of normalcy. They wanted to get back to work. They wanted to be able to function. They wanted to be able to say that things were okay. That really formulates how you think about customer experience, that the customer has to be in the center of everything that you do. After that, my second kind of federal job, a third one, was when I was actually supervisor, and then ended up having 9/11 happen, and trying to support the entire country and doing the same thing again, same type of experience, right? Which is, if you are there trying to provide direct support in such a matter of a crisis period, and realizing that these people want to be able to contribute, they want to have something solid to focus on, and they just want to have a place to sit and a computer to use. That actually is really formative, and it's one of the things that no matter where I am, I always think about today of, we've got to think about the people, our citizens and our employees, because that is what makes the mission happen. The second kind of thing that came up as I was kind of in my first supervisory position was similar to what we heard a little bit earlier from Stacy. Often I was the only woman in the room, and definitely being a first-time supervisor, it was interesting to watch them. Yeah, I would, they would be in conversations. We'd be trying to find solutions for technology challenges. We would be thinking about brainstorming, and literally I would bring up ideas and always have them dismissed. I actually then, started partnering with a contractor colleague of mine that I solidly respected. And I would say something and I would literally look at my watch and I would nod to him and we would time it. And literally 5 to 10 minutes after I would say it, he would say the same thing and it was always taken, always. And so, that sticks with me of you need to make sure that you are respecting the positions of others, making sure that you allow every voice to be heard, be able to have those debates. But when you're in a culture where, certain things are respected and certain voices are those that are respected and listened to, whether that is, a Fed or a contractor or a position of a leadership, make sure you understand the culture that you're in and figure out how you can be successful in it. Was it really irritating? Did it bother me to no end that, it wasn't my voice that was heard? It was somebody else's. But at the end of the day, what did it matter? We got to the right solutions and we were able to figure out how that culture worked and we're successful in it. So I think that's one of the things you have to think about. All of us are different. People tend to gravitate to the people that are like them, either from a belief perspective, a personality perspective, just the environment they're in. And so how do you make sure that you're being able to navigate in that if you're slightly different than the normal culture? The third area that I think that has really left me is my first federal supervisory position. I started with 9 feds and I had 20 contractors. 9/11 happened and they decided, we need to reshuffle how the Customs Service, as it becomes CBP at DHS, how we're doing IT land administration. So I went from having a GS-14 with that good size staff to 120 feds reporting to me and 250 contractors at the same grade. And most of the feds that were working for me were my peers. And so how do you have people that were your peers now working for you, have very vocal, how to make sure that you're respecting them? One of the things we had to do early on was something called US Visit, which was something we had to turn around and get into all the airports in a matter of 4 weeks. We had to do this across the country. We had to do it with, very little bit of resources and not a lot of time. I was not a very popular person by canceling everybody's Christmas vacation that year, but we were able to be successful. The reason it was successful is I listened to the people around me. I set the vision and the goal of what we needed to accomplish. And then when, they were actually having an award ceremony at the White House, it wasn't myself that went. I sent the 2 people that worked for me that made it happen, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. At the end of it, we actually had a team that had gelled together as opposed to being confrontational, because we all understood what our value was. We respected each other. We could be able to understand where the different skill sets across our organization were. And that, at the end of the day, we were going to sink and swim together. And I think that's one of the things that sticks with me is anything that's accomplished is done by a group of people, not by an individual. And so being able to respect those people, showing them their value, but also making sure you're clear on the direction and the expectation and monitoring toward that progress to success is something else that has always stood with me.
And in all those experiences, it's probably hard to prepare because they were totally unexpected. What did you say? How do you, like Stacy was saying, how do you ensure your strengths are being recognized in a group of diverse people?
I mean, I think, I'm the opposite of Stacy, which is I'm the one that wants to actually blend into the background. Every Myers-Briggs I've taken, I'm a 100% introvert. So I usually just let the work stand for itself. I'm not going to be, talking about what I did. I'm going to make sure that I am, praising the folks that are within the team that made it successful. But usually I let the work stand for itself. People have always told me, it's like, you would have moved up faster if you would have, pushed on all your successes and bragged about them. It's just not who I am. But, as both Karen and Mary said, I was, before I was at GSA, I was the CIO at Health and Human Services. So, obviously the work did stand for itself. I did open the doors by being, conscientious, dedicated, and the best public servant I can be. And, at the end of the day, that has been enough.
The work speaks for itself. Karen, same question for you. Those top 3 experiences that shaped you to who you are now.
I'm thinking I'm applying for a job to work with Beth after all that. I really appreciate all the comments that she made. So there are 3, and I think they play off of a lot of what Mary and Beth also talked about knowing your the culture and the organization and where you are. But there are a couple, and they primarily happened at Department of Agriculture, because that was the longest tenure that I had at agriculture. And so anybody who is participating on this knows that culture. But one weekend, my husband was trying to teach me how to shoot a rifle. And I did a really great job and had the best, it was the best shot. He wanted me to go deer hunting and everything, except I totally held the rifle wrong and had to go to the emergency room and had a big black eye with stitches from the scope. And what I realized was when I walked in, every guy in the organization realized what I was doing, and I became part of the club. And I thought, oh, they all understood that I was trying to learn how to, fire a rifle. They all talked about these stories associated with hunting and all this other stuff. And what I realized was the culture, you have to know what your coworkers are all interested in, because we're not all interested in the same thing. And that really stuck with me, because when we're talking about, you look around the room and you're the only woman, I've never really done that until somebody points that out to me. But what I did do was learn about sports. Every Monday, everybody talks about sports. And so I played sports anyway, and I played all kinds of team sports when I came through high school and played in college. So it was hey, sports was a common language that regardless of what you were doing, you could talk about sports and find something that then kind of was the icebreaker. So that was a big aha moment for me. The other one was I was rising fast. I did talk a little bit about crash and burning, but there was a promotion that everybody thought for sure I competed for it. And to this day, I did not get it. It was a GS-14. I didn't get the job. And I was really angry because I thought I did everything. I did everything all the OPM training courses told me to do, everything. And I was the right person for that job. And I had a senior leader pull me aside and they said, look, you are the best technically qualified person for this job. When you get to your level now and you start moving, there are more things that are more important than just being on the best qualified list. And that it's how well are you going to gel with the team and, all of these other different things. And that I thought, wow, she really thought a lot of me to pull me aside to explain to me there are other more important things when you start getting to the senior leadership thing, that you have to look around and look horizontally around to see what the dynamics are so that you can be a well-rounded candidate to fit into the team. And then the last thing that I would share is I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We haven't talked about all of this. We met when we were 16 and 17 years old. There's a part in your career, before both of us started down this path, we had to make a decision about who was the number one career. And then all the decisions in our marriage were based around who was the number one career. And I share this with everybody because it's when you both have a promotion is not the time for you to decide or figure out who has the number one career in a relationship. And I am not the number one career in our family. My husband is the number one career. So when I tell people that kind of makes people think holy moly. But because those decisions were made as you're going through a relationship, those things happen and you make decisions based on those priorities. And so I share that with everyone because You know, like I said, we've been together since we were 16 and 17 years old. I'm 61 now. So, you know, it wasn't easy, but that one key decision that was made really helped balance everything as you're going through your career.
And I think Karen brought up a very interesting point, and I wanted to open it up to Beth and Mary. Have either one of you experienced a home life and work life balance situation that you'd like to share with the group, or what you learned from it with balancing home life and work life, especially in your busy careers?
Oh, for sure. So I had children fairly young, right out of college, and I was at GSA at the time, and I was probably 24 when I had my first, and 27 when I had my second. And again, in my job supporting other federal agencies, I was traveling a lot, right? And so you have this sense of guilt, am I paying enough attention to my kids and what's going on in their life? So I made sure I was always involved in their school and their extracurricular, like sports activities, and part of the teams. And so it becomes a hard juggle. In around 2000, so my first son was born in 1990, so he was 10. I was taking a master's program, and it was at the time all online, which was kind of new. So I spent every night and weekend, working and trying to do the schoolwork and keep up with the coursework and work on teams. And my younger son at the time was 7, and he walked up to me, he's a guitar player, and he says, "Mom, I've written a song about you." It's called "The Computer Is Me." And I went, "Oh no, this is terrible." So that has still, he's now 28, right? And I still remember that. And so you really have to say, like to Karen's point, what's important and how do you balance that? Because I certainly wanted a career. I wanted to be, contributing. It was important for me just as a person to have some things to do and own. But you really do have to think about, planning that family and what does that mean and what are you willing to do or to give up, right? Either way. So just to be a little bit thoughtful about that. And I was pretty young at the time and I didn't really think through all of that, but luckily everything turned out okay.
Beth, you have anything?
I probably have a similar situation as Mary, but mine's kind of the reverse of Karen's, which is, my husband and I were both IT. We actually met at CBP, when we were both, I was a Fed and he was a contractor. And we actually, I actually got a different job, so we weren't in the same office anymore. So we could actually date and eventually got married. But at the time, when we got married, it was kind of decided that, I was on an upward trajectory, and he was fine doing kind of IT land support stuff. So I was going to be the one to move forward, and he would be the one that kind of, took the back seat. A couple of years ago, we have a son that we had adopted 13 years ago at this point. And when I was the CIO at Health and Human Services, as you can imagine, there is no off button. And Karen and Mary both know this. There are jobs that there is no off button. And trying to balance, him trying to get to our son, and he was doing some struggling at school. I mean, just, not having any time to be able to do that, though I did make time to go to baseball games and as many things at school as I could. But we actually made the choice of having my husband retire early. He actually, retired a few years ago and is now a full-time dad. And it's really helped us this last year where, the last year he's been, on his virtual classes, and he's there to help him and take care of the house. And I have my little office here in the back. And, that really helps. I mean, there are some things we have to balance out from a lifestyle perspective, only having one salary, but it works. And, you have to just make sure that what is right for you. And I, tell people even now when I came to GSA, one of the reasons I did it was to have a better work-life balance, because I didn't want to have the guilt of, at the end when my son is leaving home in a few years that, it's gone and I missed all the experiences and I can't get back. And there were a lot of them that I was missing. And so, having the right job where I'm still feeling like it's challenging me. It's something that I love to do, but I can now do the work-life balance. And at the stage in my life I'm in, that to me is more important than what's the upward trajectory of the position.
So what I'm hearing from everyone is communication is key, finding out what's important to you, what's right to you, having that communication with your family. and that makes all the difference. I want to go to a question I have from the attendees, and I pose this to everyone on the panel. Do you believe you would have the same success in the private sector as you've had in the public sector? And that's for anyone who wants to take that.
So I'll go first. I think yes, because we all have basic skills, basic knowledge, basic drive. Those are all internal to us, right? And so we just chose the path. We were motivated by public service, so we chose the path of public service. You know, my dad threw me in there, but Mary and I were talking about this earlier. My dad's was retired federal civil servant, and I did it because he said I was falling off his insurance. But the drive that we have, the drive to the mission, the drive to the outcomes, the way that we learn, the way that you always have to constantly learning and those types of things. I don't think any one of us, knowing the things that they've accomplished in their career, wouldn't have been successful in the private industry versus government, because it's the ability to learn, adapt, and continue to lead. And I think that's innate in all of us on this panel.
Yeah, I think the other thing that, you know, people have to think about is within the federal government, we have all the kind of, you know, culture issues, technology issues, leadership challenges that's in the private sector. But when people from the private sector usually come into the public sector, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea you had all this regulation. I have no idea that the budget was this complicated. So I always tell people, I said, see, you know, we could actually do things in the private sector, because man, if we can accomplish it with all of these roadblocks and still be successful, we sure should be able to be successful on the other side.
Excellent. And one more question from the group. I think it's definitely a good question, especially right now and everything we've gone through in 2020 and just the week of 2021. How do you all feel about the emotional support of the professional world these days within the government sector? And this is again for anyone who wants to take it.
I'll take it. And maybe, you know, just again, I've only been at NASA just under a year, and started there in February of last year. Within 6 weeks, you know, we went home. And the culture and the support have been amazing. Everything about NASA and GSA was the same way. You know, it's people first. Take care of the people, and that's really the most important thing that matters. And so we've been given not only, you know, the tools and the technology and the culture to do our work, but also it's been very clear that as a person, you are what matter, and you know, we are taking care of each other through this. So I have seen that, and I think that, you know, people across the agency would echo that as well. And we are very purposeful about that, right? That came up too, is, you know, being very purposeful, making sure, especially in this environment, that you are thinking about people. Every person has a different situation, right, that they are dealing with. And so, you know, just making sure that you're checking in with people and letting them know that, you know, not only do we care, but you count and you matter, and what's going on with you matters most.
And Mary, do you feel like you play a role in your position, even just checking on your own team? Or I know that some workplaces have set aside like sick days, emotional support days. I'm sorry, I forget how is the exact term, but do you think you play a role in that, just making sure your team is okay?
Oh yeah, I think, you know, we all do as leaders, and I think even across the team, no matter what role you play or where you are in the organization, it's important that we all sort of, you know, are aware and sensitive. But I've got a very small team right now, and you know, we check in with each other both individually and as a group, and you know, just try to start off all of our like weekly check-ins with, you know, more personal stuff and how people are doing, and you know, just that kind of thing. So that again is really important, giving people the space they need to take care of the things they need to take care of. You know, that's again, people have things that they need to get done. I know I've got people on my team that have, you know, a lot of small children at home. Some are in school, some aren't, some are, you know, half and half. So just being sensitive to that, and again, understanding that they're dealing with a lot of things, and the work's going to get done. So it's been working, I think, really well for us.
Mission focused and always staying on top of communication. One more question from the group. They've asked about the amount of technology acquired yet not utilized. What are you all's thoughts on underutilized technology currently in government, in your respective agencies? And this is for anyone.
So I'll try first. Because I had the opportunity, I don't know, there's a few people that have this opportunity, but I started June 1st, so it's right smack in the middle of the pandemic. And how do you come on board and then looking at the technology, what's been deployed, how you're doing things. And as you know, we are navigating probably one of the largest cyber incidences that are happening right now as well across the federal government. So it is really taking a look at what are the resources that you have and how do you capitalize them and how do you expand upon them. I will tell you that DHS, when I came here, the ability to leverage and pivot because of the COVID and taking the whole workforce virtually so that you're not missing a beat as it relates to the mission, and how the whole department did that pivot down to the intelligence agencies is remarkable. And I think all the technology that was bought and all the things that we've talked about through our careers about what does network modernization mean, going to the cloud, having these capabilities, having those, they all came to life through this crisis. And it's very rare when you go into a job that everyone says, thank God for the CIO team, because they did exactly what we needed to be able to do to transition so that we could continue on the mission. And so that really was eye-opening. But to Mary's point, the other piece is to build a team when you're in a virtual environment to get to know people. And we've all been talking about it. It's a different set of skills. Stacy talked about it as well in her talk. You know, there's those of us who had retired and were working, you know, virtually across the United States with a lot of different people. So we had some of those skills. I had some of those skills. But when you come into the government environment who is used to being in a conference room, the adoption and the adapting that was done, you know, is going to be a wonderful business case study going forward on the use of leveraging technology.
And I want to ask back on subject with women in technology. Moving forward, Beth, I want to ask you this. What is your vision for the future of women in technology?
I think I'm kind of like a couple of the other folks, which is, you know, I never really thought of myself as a, you know, a champion or leader across the board. But when you find yourself, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in a particular chair, then you need to think about how you got to that chair, and, you know, what are you going to do to prepare other people to take your chair on. And I think that, you know, for me, women in technology is about that, which is, you know, how do we make sure no matter who the individual is, that they, if that is what they're aspiring to, you know, what kind of things that you want to try to prepare them for so that they can take that journey. I kind of have the same kind of experience as Karen. You know, a couple of times I actually tried to have a mentor and it didn't really go so well, or I was thrown into positions so quickly that there just wasn't even time for a mentor. It's like, just sink or swim and you'll figure it out. But that doesn't mean that, you know, everyone behind us should have to, you know, jump into the deep end of the pool. I think that, you know, we need to recognize that for me, it's more around understanding kind of what the skill sets that we need to have today. What should we be doing for upskilling our folks and finding out people that have some natural aptitude in particular areas so that they can potentially move into the careers of the future. The jobs that the three of us have today, they're evolving. They're evolving every single day. And the skills that the people that'll come into these positions after we're out of them are going to be different than ours, right? And so how do we make sure that, you know, while we probably have, you know, sound troubleshooting skills, some technical skills, obviously, you know, communication and collaboration, negotiation skills, what is that other set of skills that they're going to need? I mean, and just as Karen talked about, you know, the way that we interact with each other is changing. People were asking me the other day, it's like, what do you think the future of technology at GSA is going to be? One of the things that, our administrator has really been pushing on during this whole period of time is to have, same experience from anywhere. I think we heard a little bit about that. And especially as we start moving into a hybrid where more people start going into the office at some point, there are going to be people that stay remote for a number of different reasons. And I kind of flippantly told people, I was like, well, how are you going to do that? And they were like, well, we'll just add, another collaboration tool. I said, no, you're going to have to move to virtual reality, right? I mean, the only way that you're really going to have the same experience is if you all have a virtual reality experience. So it's like everybody's in the same space doing the same kinds of things, right? And so we have to think about, if this is the projection of where we're going, and this is where we're going as a nation, what are those things needing to be? And how do we kind of challenge the folks coming behind us to make sure that they're thinking about those things, looking at the world through that next set of lenses that they need to have and preparing themselves for that. It's their responsibility to do that preparation, whether that's through mentorship, classes, doing mentorship, rotations, whatever those things might be, what works for them. We can't be prescriptive on how they get those skills, but what we can help them do is what skills we think are needed, where they potentially want to invest their time so that they have the ability to be the next women in technology.
Giving the guidance, I love that. And Mary, where do you think we're headed to next?
Well, I think, just focused on government service, the workforce, women in leadership roles. We've been seeing more and more of that. I was, again, having known Beth and Karen for a long time, and then thinking about just the other women that I've worked with throughout my career. And I'm doing what I can do to help provide those kinds of opportunities. Whether it's, so I'm on, like, for instance, I'm on the advisory board of Virginia Tech in the management department. I'm the only federal person on that board. I think I'm the only Fed they've ever had. And so what I'm trying to do is make sure that the students and that the thinking of the management department encompasses government service. And that's just not something that they think about other than, job fairs and those kinds of things where the government's invited to come. So I am also making sure that I'm opening up and letting them understand, what government service is, how to find a government job, how to look at internships. NASA does a great job with the STEM program at all ages, right, for students and for educators. So just making sure that government is doing its part to provide opportunities for people, and get people in the door early and let them see that there are opportunities and see, women at different seats at the table so they can see themselves in those roles.
And Karen, same question. How can we go there all together?
So I appreciate the comments that Mary made, because when I was out, this kind of wraps up a lot. I was on the visiting committee at my college, right? And the business and economics school at WVU. Yay, I saw where she had Penn State. Boo. But anyway, I saw that little mug. But I do think it's all about the workforce, right? And and Stacy said it best, it's diversity of all kinds, not just, women diversity, but diversity of all kinds. And to get public sector woven into the business schools or to the colleges so that they realize the experiences that you get in the public sector. And I would share this with you is that when I was doing my first go around and stuff, it was a CEO of a company who said that he would hire a government executive over a private industry executive every time. And I said, well, what's the difference? Oh, I see somebody saying we are Penn State. So, and I said, well, what would be the difference? And they said, the difference is government executives live with the consequences of their decisions. They said a lot of times in the private sector, we switch, they move us so fast that we don't see the long-term effects for the decisions that we make. But they said the government sector folks are in it for the long haul, for the long mission, for the outcome. And I think that needs to be reflected in a lot of things as we go forward, especially in the way the school and the curriculum and the business is how they show that. Because when you come into the public sector, like Mary was talking about, they're making decisions of what is the best way to land on the moon in order to go to Mars, right? Like where do you do that? You know, we're making decisions about implications for our grandchildren into the future. We're working on budgets that are huge. Beth talked about that. Budgets that are huge that you never really get that same type of experience in private industry, and then the outcomes that you're focused on, and then how do you articulate that? And so it's huge experiences, but I think it has to be done in total partnership. And so forums such as this, you know, the networking, I'm going to come back to networking, working with the firm, working with other different associations, reaching out to different groups that you normally wouldn't work with. That brings the diversity of the thought into solutions that we need for the long term. And so the networking and doing diversity of groups, I think is also very helpful. And I think AFFIRM really does show a lot of that partnership going forward because they're very focused on education, and that's the way of the future.
Education, 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 and
Yes,
technology.
ma'am.
By way of technology.
By way of technology, yes.
Ladies, this has been fantastic. We have a few minutes left, so I want to give everybody a brief moment for final thoughts. Mary, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. No, well, my final thought is this was a lot of fun and a great discussion. And I learned a lot from Stacy and Beth and Karen, and just appreciated being part of this discussion and back with AFFIRM. I think the last time was last year, this exact same panel I attended in person. So that it's been a lot of fun. It's just nice to be part of this organization. And, you know, I would say to people, just again, take opportunities as they come. Get involved, get engaged, find ways to build your network and your connections. Make sure you're building great relationships, because this is a small community, whether you're government or industry. It's a small group of people that rely on each other. And so, you know, just take advantage of all those opportunities and get involved.
I see a lot of shout outs in the chat for Go Hokies and Penn State. So everybody's really excited and fired up in the chat. Beth, final thoughts?
So, I mean, I guess my final thought for folks that are participating today is, you know, if you have a passion to do something, you know, just figure out how to put one foot in front of the other and go do it. You know, the federal government, as I tell everybody, I said, you know, one of the things I don't think we do well as a government is, you know, what we were just talking about. There's so many great opportunities within the federal government. I mean, there isn't another place that you're going to be able to talk about a Mars mission, right? We're not going to have another place where, you know, they didn't crack the genome any place else but NIH. You know, there aren't going to be other places where you're building and getting an Ebola vaccine. We're not going to have other places where, you know, they're really leaning into new technologies like some of the labs at the Department of Energy. So, you know, there's such a vast capability across the federal government. There are so many unique capabilities and really cutting edge. So, you know, well, there's nothing cool and new in the federal government. It's just wrong. It's a fallacy. And if you have a passion for something, it's going to be here, and technology is going to be part of it. Over the course of my 25 years, I went from, you know, having floppy disks, and, you know, we were never going to need more than a 20 meg hard drive to, you know, my probably text messages take more than 20 meg, right? And that, you know, we actually have robotics and artificial intelligence. You know, the next great thing is around the corner, and we want you to be part of it. So just figure out how and where you'd like to be, and let us help you get there.
Thank you. And Karen, I have had a lot of questions come in. Everyone wants to know what is next for Karen Evans. So I want your final thoughts, and if you care to tell them what's next, feel free.
Well, first off, I did see these different things coming across and saying good luck and thank you so much. And I just want to thank all of you guys for the participation and the partnership throughout the years. AFFIRM has always been a great partner and has helped with education issues. And so I just want to thank AFFIRM for giving me this opportunity. Also, big shout out to Mary and Beth. I can't imagine a better panel to be on in my last week going forward and dealing with transition. So thank you guys so much. But what's next for me is, you guys know I have a passion, you know, I will always contribute. I'm looking on the horizon onto what the big issues are. I look at the opportunity of what we're going through right now with the cybersecurity event that is happening of national importance, and I can see a lot of opportunities that we will need to tackle as a nation. And so as I depart, I will probably be championing a few of the issues that we'll be able to accomplish as a nation, both in a public-private partnership. So look to hear for some more, but it's always going to be about communications, and it's always going to be about networking, and it's always going to be about partnership.
Amazing. Thank you all panelists. This was excellent. And as you see in front of the chat, everyone enjoyed it. Best wishes to you, Karen. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much, Beth. This was excellent.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much to Mary, Karen, Beth, and of course our moderator, Charisse. It was great to hear your thoughts on women in leadership and really just sharing all of your personal stories. You know, at our core, we are people. So hearing your personal experiences and the ways you deal with things certainly resonate with all of us. So once again, this event was truly inspirational and one of AFFIRM's best events of the year. We appreciate you taking time to join us today. We know you're all incredibly busy. AFFIRM applauds your contributions and leadership. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We encourage you all to take time to complete the short survey and hope you'll join us next month on February 17th for a webinar on the impact of CMMC on government contracting. Also, please join us for the AFFIRM Step Up for STEM 5K in April, where we will host a fun weekend of exercise to help forge a path to a government STEM career through scholarships and grants. Check out affirm.org for more details. Thank you and have a good day, everyone.